What's up, guys? Matt here at the American Edge in the Guild of Professional Sharpeners, and I had the awesome opportunity of having a conversation with Josh and Kyle from WorkSharp, and I'm going to share with you 3 top takeaways from that conversation. But before I do, I just want to let you know that the whole conversation has been made available to the Guild of Professional Sharpeners. You can check that out at guildofsharpeners.org. And here is the full list of things we discussed during that conversation. We talked about the background of WorkSharp and the relationship like Derek's and how that all happened. We spent quite a bit of time on belts. Belts has been a big thing for me to learn about, and I really appreciate the info they gave there. WorkSharp has done some research on the temperatures. There's always this concern, and I feel like it's been incorrectly marketed in all sorts of ways about like ruining the temper of a knife, right? So let's actually put some research into that. Mistakes that beginners make, particularly on the blade grinding attachment. Some selling points on investing in that gear if you're already experienced on other equipment. We talked about the tool grinding attachment, one of my favorite things, but is no more. We talked about the field sharpener and specific conversation around the hunting community. We talked about air quality around when using the blade grinding attachment or any grinding attachment. And we talked about marketing specifically for sharpening services, ways to market their service. And we talked about the future of WorkSharp, and it was awesome, man. That was so cool. I am so grateful to Josh and Kyle for making that time. Okay, and moving on to the takeaways. Takeaway number 1 was with regard to belts, and a part of that conversation was in regard to something that I've heard about the way the belts wear and developing an understanding of when we need to swap out the belts on the WorkSharp blade grinding attachment.
No, that's spot on. And I brought with me, this is the X22 belt from our blade grinding attachment. And I brought it because, one, it's worn. This belt has seen a lot of use. But I'm still using it. It's still cutting. It's still very effective. So one of the things that is important is to not let your eye decide when an abrasive is worn. Because to your point, the corduroy looking pattern on this abrasive is essentially like lining up bench stones onto a cloth backing. As that stone wears down, it's exposing fresh abrasive, so it's going to keep cutting. So one could use a belt like this essentially till you get down to the cloth backing before it's exhausted. But one of the key or lead indicators I use for determining when to replace a belt is stroke count. For example, when a belt is fresh, maybe it takes me 3 strokes to get a burr. As that belt wears, it's going to take 5 strokes, and then it's going to start extending that time. When I start to get it in the stroke count really high, that's when I'm going to replace that belt. But our average with moderate pressure, we're consistently getting between 50 and 100 knives sharpened per belt. So that gives a good baseline for what to expect from a belt. But I would say when in doubt, they're probably replaced prematurely. There tends to be a lot more life left in a belt when people think they're exhausted.
Okay, that was awesome. There's a lot more that was into that conversation, specifically on belts. And if you want to see that, be sure to go over to guildofsharpeners.org. There's a free membership. You can check it out. You can get that whole interview and all that we spoke about with regard to belts. The second thing I want to give to you that they gave to us was beginner mistakes on the blade grinding attachment.
Yeah, I think what I mentioned was using too much pressure. That's one that people, if you're used to sharpening on a fixed stone, a diamond stone or whetstone, there's a little bit more pressure applied there. When you get to a moving abrasive, you can really back off a lot. That's going to help with stability and maintaining your level angle. A couple of other things would be to stop the knife with the tip before it crosses the halfway mark on the belt. You probably know what I'm talking about there, but basically as you draw it across, you would lift off with the knife still making contact in the middle. Because it's a flexible belt, it will wrap around that tip if you draw it off, especially if you're using too much pressure, and it can round that tip. But stop prematurely or before it crosses a halfway mark, it's actually extremely effective at restoring a sharp tip. Kyle reminded me that a frequent one that we'll see is as you draw the knife across, a lot of people will start to pick up the heel or the handle of the knife, and that's going to change the angle. The angle's already set. It's not like a fixed stone where as you draw through the curve, you do need to lift because it's flat and you're only making contact. And run it straight through. Use a low speed. There's no need to get crazy with it. Not as low as it goes, but you know, a medium low range is a really effective place to sharpen. And I think I would also recommend to practice on a beater knife. Take something that's not your prized possession and get the feel for it. It's a power tool. And so if you don't have a lot of experience with it, definitely take some time to learn it and practice before you bring out the gold class.
I'd add on there too, you know, it circles back to the heat conversation we were having, but really understanding the abrasive selection and where to best apply it in the sharpening journey. Heat can also be an indication that you're asking too much of a belt and you should be using a coarser belt. So it's a bit counterintuitive, but if you have a chip repair or a broken tip repair to do, it's better to get in and get it done quickly on a very coarse grit than it is to spend a lot of time trying to do it on a medium grit belt. So get in, get the work done, get it done quick, and then it will keep the heat down, and it will also expedite the sharpening process. So I think that too is a part of the learning journey, getting comfortable with putting a coarse grit belt on there and really doing the shaping and repair to reduce heat and optimize sharpening.
Okay, so much there, and like these guys just delivered, man. I love it. This was such an awesome conversation. The third and final takeaway I want to give to you today was around the hunting community, and the takeaway is something that this video is part of, and I will leave I gave a little bit of a backstory to where I stand on the topic to give Josh and Kyle something to respond to. So I'm going to cut right into that. Like back sort of where I'm at with this, and that I have observed, like I'm not an avid hunter myself, but I have observed from the outside looking in that it seems like the trend has been towards those disposable blades in the field for field dressing animals. And I would love to be part of a movement that resurrects hunters investing like they do in their glass and their guns, investing in a blade, and then also investing in the tool and the knowledge and the skill to take care of it in the field. And I feel like you guys have delivered with your field sharpening system, but I wanted to just try to get any ideas from you and what can we do from the perspective of the town sharpener to educate people and get them experienced on that kit that you guys have put out.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we'd all love to be a huge part of getting rid of the replaceable blade trend that's plaguing our hunting community. Yeah, I mean, looking at it, I'm a hunter, and you know, it's just not part of the legacy of the experience, in my opinion. And that's obviously a little bit jaded, but I think there's some real truth there in understanding how to own your blade and be able to create a sharp edge and maintain that in the field. I love the field sharpener for doing that. And I think it's just telling that story a little bit more. You know, picking up a knife and you know, that was a huge part of my experience with knives as a young guy. And you know, it was my dad handing me a knife, and you know, it was right before hunting season, the first time I went out whitetail hunting with him, and I still got that knife and I keep it sharp, and that's a big piece of that. You don't let it go dull. A hunter, I think the reason that replaceable blades do really well, and the other place we see them is in like razor blade applications for, you know, contractors and, you know, DIY projects, all sorts of that. And those people understand the value of a sharp tool, whereas, you know, a lot of kitchen application sharpeners or kitchen knife users, it's been 10 years, it's been 40 years. We just heard from a guy who said, I got a knife block 40 years ago, haven't sharpened it. And you're thinking, really? Wow, you're dealing with butter knives. But that's not the case in the hunting community and also in the contracting community, where they understand the value of it, but they've told themselves that the solution is not to sharpen that blade, but it's just to replace it. There's a lot of safety hazards and dangers that come with that, and I think that's half of the story. The other half is the legacy piece. It's, be a man and sharpen your knife. Can't say it much more softly than that.
I'd add too that I think the success we found with our field sharpener, it solves legitimate problems for people that brought them to that place of those disposable knives. Field sharpening for that outdoorsman, if you wanted high performance, it was a trade-off of complexity. You're not necessarily going to bring a jig and clamp type sharpening solution into the field with you and use it in that moment to maintain your knife. High performance, but it's an ergonomic nightmare out in the field. And on the other side, something that is quick and easy isn't delivering the edge performance that that customer wants and demands at that point in the outdoor adventure. And that's where our field sharpener has brought both those things together. We're able to provide angle guides so it's easy and consistent. It fits in your pack, and it's a complete solution. If you break a tip or you just need a quick strop, this small compact product that fits in your pack can be that solution in the field. So that's the intent of that product, is to empower someone to have an easy to use, high performance sharpener in the field and not be beholden to a replaceable blade knife. We want them to buy a premium knife and maintain it and then sharpen it throughout its journey and get back into that heirloom hunting knife that someone can then hand down through generations and continue that pride and that legacy.
Okay, that is so cool, and I just would love to be part of that resurrection of pride in knives and edges for the hunting community as well as all the others. So I hope you got value out of that. I know I did. Again, if you want to check out the whole thing, that is available at guildofsharpeners.org. Make sure you check out worksharptools.com for their whole list of offerings, which is extensive. Check them out on YouTube at WorkSharp, and make sure you subscribe and hit the thumbs up for future conversations that we'll be having over here. Thank you.